Rainbow Magic. Amy the Amethyst Fairy. By Daisy Meadows. All set for adventure. Kirsty, we're here, Rachel Walker announced, looking out of the car window and pointing at a large sign on the wall which read "Welcome to Tippington Manor." Kirsty Tate, Rachel's best friend, was peering up at the cloudy sky. "I hope it's not going to rain," she said anxiously. Then the house itself caught her eye. "Oh, look, Rachel, there's the house. Isn't it lovely?" At the bottom of the long, sweeping gravel drive stood Tippington Manor, a huge Victorian house with an enormous wooden door, rows of tall windows and ivy rambling all over its old red bricks. The house was surrounded by gardens full of flowers and spreading trees, their autumn leaves glowing in shades of red and gold. "Look over there, Kirsty," Rachel said to her friend as Mr. Walker turned into the car park. "An adventure playground." Kirsty looked in the direction Rachel was pointing and was delighted to spy the playground on a hill behind the house. She could see some tires dangling on ropes, a silver slide and what looked like a big wooden treehouse in the center, built around a towering oak tree. "Isn't it great?" Kirsty whispered to Rachel as they climbed out of the car. "The fairies would love that treehouse." Rachel grinned and nodded. She and Kirsty were the only people in the world who were friends with the fairies. Whenever there was trouble in fairyland, the two girls tried to help sort things out. The fairies' biggest troublemaker was cold, icy Jack Frost, who had recently stolen the 7 magic jewels from the Queen of Fairyland's tiara. Because these gems controlled much of the magic in fairyland, greedy Jack Frost had wanted them for himself. But when the glowing heat and light of the jewels had begun to melt his ice castle, Jack Frost had flung them out into the human world in a fit of rage. The fairies had asked Rachel and Kirsty to help them find the jewels and return them to the Queen's tiara. But Jack Frost had sent his mean goblin servants to guard the gems, which made getting them back a whole lot more difficult. "I can see where you two want to go first." Mrs. Walker laughed, as Kirsty and Rachel stared eagerly at the treehouse. "Let's find the orchids, then you can go and explore the playground while your dad and I look at the flowers. They have a very famous orchid collection here." "Orchids are Dad's favorite flowers," Rachel told Kirsty, rolling her eyes. "He's mad about them." Mr. Walker laughed. "They're very beautiful and unusual," he explained. "But a lot of them are tropical plants, so they need to be kept in greenhouses." A wooden signpost pointed in the direction of the orchid houses, so the girls followed Mr. and Mrs. Walker down the twisting path which skirted the beautiful gardens. The path took them along a shady avenue, lined with trees and marble statues, to the bottom of a hill. There they found 3 large glass greenhouses filled with orchids, and a little shop selling plants. "You girls have fun," Mr. Walker said with a smile. "We'll meet you back here in an hour." Rachel and Kirsty waved and headed towards the playground. "I wonder when we'll find the next magic jewel," Kirsty said thoughtfully. "We only have a few more days before I have to go home." "Don't worry, we'll find them all," Rachel said in a determined voice. "I know we will." At that moment, the sun broke through the gray clouds and began to shine brightly. The cold, crisp air immediately seemed a little warmer. "That's better," Rachel said, smiling in the sunshine. The girls reached the playground. "There's no one else here," Kirsty said happily, looking around. "That's great," laughed Rachel. "It's like our very own private adventure playground." Apart from the swings, there was a big slide, a sand pit, and a maze made of tires and rope ladders. But right in the middle of the playground was the biggest and best treehouse the girls had ever seen. It was built around the trunk of a huge, old oak, and it was painted green with little round windows cut out of the walls here and there. There were 4 other trees surrounding the oak, each with wooden bridges attached to them. These bridges made a circle around the central trunk, while 2 more bridges led from outer trees directly to the treehouse itself. Safety nets were strung between the bridges to make sure nobody would get hurt if they fell. "Look at the treehouse!" Kirsty gasped. "It's amazing! Let's climb up to it, shall we?" Rachel followed Kirsty over to the treehouse. "Look, there's only one way to get to it," she said, pointing to a ladder attached to one of the trees in the outer ring. "You go first, Kirsty." Kirsty began to climb the ladder, with Rachel close behind. When they reached the top, they were near one of the 2 bridges which led right to the treehouse itself. "This is great," Kirsty said happily, as they walked across the bridge, holding onto the rope rail. "And we've got it all to ourselves." As they reached the treehouse, Rachel suddenly felt a sharp tug at the back of her head, as if somebody had pulled her hair. She stopped and turned round to see that the pink ribbon from her ponytail was dangling from a branch overhanging the bridge. "Hang on, Kirsty," she called to her friend, who was already inside the treehouse. "The ribbon from my ponytail's just come out. It got caught on a twig as we were crossing the bridge." Kirsty turned to look. "Quick, go and grab it before the breeze blows it away," she urged. Rachel was just about to step back onto the bridge when something very strange happened. The bridge began to shimmer and flicker, and for a moment parts of it seemed to disappear. Rachel and Kirsty blinked in surprise, and when they looked again the bridge had reappeared, looking just as solid and normal as ever. "Did you see that, Kirsty?" Rachel gasped. "Yes, I did," replied Kirsty, hardly able to believe her eyes. "Do you think?" But before she could say anything else, the bridge began to flicker out of sight again. The girls rubbed their eyes in disbelief, but this time it didn't come back. The bridge had completely vanished. "Now you see it, now you don't." "It's gone," Rachel said in amazement. She peered out across the safety net, but there was no sign of the bridge they had just crossed. "Do you think it could be fairy magic?" Kirsty smiled. "Maybe one of the magic jewels is nearby," she suggested. "Doesn't one of them control appearing and disappearing magic?" "Yes," Rachel agreed excitedly. "Amy's amethyst. Maybe it's in the treehouse. If it is, we'll have to be on the lookout for goblins," Kirsty reminded her. Rachel nodded. "I don't know how I'm going to get my ribbon back," she sighed, staring at the ribbon which was still dangling from the branch. "I can't reach it without the bridge." Suddenly her eyes widened in horror. "Kirsty, however are we going to get down again? That bridge led to the ladder." "Don't worry, Dot," Kirsty replied. She turned and pointed to the second bridge from the treehouse door, which stretched away in the opposite direction. "After we've searched the treehouse, we'll go that way. Then we can walk round the outer circle of bridges, and get back to the ladder again." "Oh, yes," Rachel agreed, looking relieved. "Of course we can." "Rachel!" "Kirsty!" sang out a silvery voice. The girl spun round at the sound of the sweet, clear voice, to see a tiny fairy swinging from Rachel's ribbon and waving at them. She wore dark purple trousers, with a lilac smock top and dainty lilac shoes. Her wand was a glittering mauve, and she wore her light brown curly hair tied up in a ponytail, decorated with 3 purple flowers. "It's Amy the Amethyst Fairy," Kirsty gasped. Amy freed Rachel's ribbon from the branch. Then, smiling all over her face, she floated gracefully down towards the girls, the pink ribbon streaming out behind her like a banner. "I'm so glad you're here, girls," she said, landing lightly on Kirsty's shoulder. "Need your help." "Thank you, Amy," Rachel said gratefully, taking the ribbon which Amy was holding out to her. "Do you think your amethyst is nearby?" Amy nodded. "I'm sure it is," she replied. "I can sense that it's not far away. Now I just need to find its hiding place." "We saw that bridge disappear," explained Kirsty, pointing at the spot where the bridge had been. "One minute it was there, and then it was gone." Amy looked very excited. "I knew I could feel my amethyst working its magic," she cried, dancing up and down on Kirsty's shoulder. "Have you seen any goblins around?" "Not yet," Kirsty replied. "We were just going to search the treehouse for your amethyst." "Let's look right away," said Amy, fluttering towards the door. Kirsty and Rachel followed her in. The treehouse was quite big, but there wasn't much inside, just some benches, a little wooden table, and the thick trunk of the oak tree growing through the middle of the room. It didn't take Amy and the girls very long to realize that the amethyst wasn't there. "Oh, dear," Amy sighed, her wings drooping. "I was so sure we'd find it here." "Don't worry, Amy," Kirsty comforted her. "We can search all the bridges, and the trees too." Talking of bridges, I wonder if the one that vanished has come back yet. While Kirsty glanced out of the window to see that the bridge had still not reappeared, Rachel stared out of the opposite window to make sure that nothing else had vanished. But suddenly a flash of light caught her eye. Was she imagining it, or had she just seen a dazzling purple sparkle in the branches of one of the trees? Rachel blinked and stared hard. There it was again! "Kirsty!" "Amy," she cried, "I can see something shining in that tree, and it's purple." Kirsty and Amy rushed over to the window. Like Rachel, they could both see a purple something, glittering and glimmering in the sunshine. "It must be my amethyst!" Amy gasped, twirling round madly in the air with excitement. "Let's go and look," said Kirsty, heading to the door. The 2 girls hurried outside with Amy flying alongside them. The tree where Rachel had spotted the amethyst was at the end of the other bridge which connected the treehouse to the outer circle. "I hope this bridge doesn't disappear," Kirsty said anxiously, as they hurried across it. "Girls, I can see my amethyst!" Amy cried joyfully. "It's up there, on that crooked branch." The girls looked where Amy was pointing. Sure enough, they could see a large, deep, purple jewel sitting on the branch. In the sunshine it glowed and winked with a rich, lilac light. "Oh, it's beautiful!" Kirsty breathed. Suddenly, Rachel stopped in her tracks. "What's that noise?" she asked, looking round.